Three, two. Welcome to What Happened on Saturday with Marlon Kerner. Marlon, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Josh. How about yourself? And I'm
I'm
sorry. I'm sorry.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry. I'm sorry. I'll
I,
say
I
it now.
I feel like I feel like I'm dead man walking here. I'm gonna play out the string because unfortunately not being a part of a conference, Notre Dame at this point, I guess a New Year's 6-day bowl is still possible, but and as a player, obviously you have your own motivation and your pro career, etc. As a fan of them, it's tough. It really is because you don't have you have the USC game this weekend, which is a rivalry game, but there's really not a lot to play for. And I'm sorry, I don't get excited for the difference between the Gator Bowl and the Poinsettia Bowl and the Citrus Bowl. Like it means nothing to me personally. So as a fan, that's one of the tough things about rooting for Notre Dame is that once you've
True.
lost twice, your season's really over.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes and no. I mean, there's always a possibility that there's multiple losses. I think Ohio State was the last team to get into it with having two losses and not having a conference
Sure.
championship. But yeah, you're right. The odds of them getting to the college football playoff is going to be very slim to none. But
And
I think for them, what you're looking for remember, this is the last year of this current format as well. So
right.
you really want to try to build some continuity on offense and defense and really try to build and set the foundation for what you're going to try to do next season as well, because there will be a lot more teams that will get into that playoff mix the way it's going to be structured next year, and two losses won't keep you out next
Right.
year.
They'd still be alive on Saturday against USC next year, which too bad it wasn't this year, but the way they're playing again, I yikes. All right, let's we're going to change it up this week, and we're going to do a top 25 rundown instead of your 5 key takeaways because there's a lot to talk about, and I want to start with number 25 in the new AP poll. I can't wait to talk to you about this. I texted you this yesterday, actually during the Bills game. It was kind of tucked away on Saturday until it went viral. The Miami Hurricanes. Okay, so let's start.
Woo!
If anybody didn't see it, they had the classic situation where all they had to do was nail the ball twice to win the game. And their coach, Mario Cristobal, for the second time in his career, this happened to him once before earlier in his career where he didn't kneel the ball as a head coach and they ended up fumbling. They decided not to kneel. Georgia Tech gets the ball back with like 30 seconds left. They go 75 yards in 3 plays, under 30 seconds on the road. And Georgia Tech is not a high-powered, explosive passing offense, to say the least. Talk me through this, Marlon. As a former player, 2 weeks ago, I feel like we had this kind of the same conversation when Notre Dame had 10 guys in the field, and that was kind of a coaching error. This is even more egregious on the head coach's decision to not just kneel the ball. What do you think in the moment? What are you thinking as a player? What's that locker room like?
It's hard to say what the locker room is feeling right now. I know frustration, not understanding why you just don't take a knee. Those are things that you practice on a weekly basis. You talk through what the scenarios are. If we get here, it wasn't one of those situations, to your point, that we got to get a first down to run out the clock. A knee ends the game. It's a done deal. The only thing that gives them life is if you run the ball or run any play and you turn the ball over. So you have to have an understanding of what the scenario is. And it just looks like in that moment, I don't know who's supposed to keep the head coach on task, or kind of say, hey, no, coach, this is not the scenario. Whatever happened, there was a breakdown in that communication. And all of a sudden, they're running the play when they don't need to. And of course, they fumble, they get the ball back, and they go down. And then on top of that, they have to score a touchdown. I don't understand how you have a guy running free
Yeah.
through your entire second. Like, he's running free. It's like they played man to man on this scenario. I'm like, this is the oddest scenario that you could ever think of in a college football game. And really, it's just you're sitting there like, man, I can't believe they lost in that fashion and in that manner, to lose where the game is pretty much yours. Like, a kneel down seals the victory. You're feeling great about yourself. You're going on saying, okay, we know we have a lot of games left to play, and we know what's coming up. You still got Florida. You still had Florida State coming up. So you had some
They'd
things
be
coming up.
5-0. They'd be
Yeah,
5-0.
It would have been real. So they dropped 8 points or
Yep.
8 spots in the poll because of loss, because that was just a bad loss, a really bad loss. And I saw about it. I wasn't watching all of the game. I was trying to flip through, and I saw an auspicious tweet come through from John Feliciano, who I still follow, former Bills center, tackle, center and guard.
Yep.
And he's like, just kneel the ball. I'm like, just kneel the ball. What the heck happened? So I flipped back to that game, and yeah, I can't believe this game ended that way. Anybody that came from that program is just like bad mismanagement, bad scenario management, and things like that can't happen. So yeah, they deserve to drop those 8 points, and they were one of 7 teams that were 7 top 25 teams that lost this past weekend.
Those are you can accept losing, because of even like a Hail Mary is at least that's an athletic play. At least the other team makes it. Even one of those 9 lateral things where it's on the field and they just out scheme you. This is just as boneheaded as it gets because the game is over, and for whatever
Right.
reason you run another play. I'm sure the defense was probably shocked that they had to be back on the field. You feel like maybe that's where the breakdown came, after the turnover. It's like, what the F? Like, why are we even back out there? And and
Right,
and, and
right.
and what a tough market for that to happen. Like Miami, the fans are kind of fair weather, and they've got to be good. It's kind of a front running town, and boy, the first thing I thought of was, boy, Mario Cristobal, probably a short leash there, and that
Right.
might have helped our boy Dion a little bit because, man, him going to the U would be quite a story. And I just feel like you can't make too many of those errors as a head coach and survive. Even if they
No.
go, 10-2, if they go 11-1, I mean, you cost yourself just everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's it right there. That was one of those losses where you're just like, I don't know what we were thinking because everything that we had was in our own destiny. Now you need some help. You need somebody else to knock off somebody else to try to get to where you want to be. And they were in the driver's seat. And so those are things where you're trying to be a national champion and you want to be the contender to be in the college football playoff. You can't make mistakes like that. Now they'll learn from this, and I think they'll be better. But definitely, like that knocks you down 8 spots, puts you all the way at the bottom of the top 25. And now you have to claw your way back into it, claw your way back up the rankings. And thankfully, they have a few more games, but they're going to need some help to get to where they want to go.
Does 19-year-old Marlon lose faith in his head coach after something like that?
No, not really. I think you just kind of say, hey, coach. Well, 19-year-old me probably wouldn't have asked like what happened, but this version of me probably like, hey, coach, what happened? Like, tell me what happened so we can figure out how we don't get in the situation again. And does the quarterback have the way to say, hey, coach, this is not the right move to go? Like, take a delay a game, take anything.
Yeah,
Anything helps in that situation than to
anything.
run the ball. Don't run the ball. Whatever else, do not hand that ball off because a turnover is the only thing that will help you lose this game. And you played into their hands.
Just
So
malpractice. Malpractice. Oh
yeah,
my gosh, malpractice.
bad
Bad.
coaching, all bad coaching right there.
Next on the list, we talked about the next two teams quite a bit on our show last weekend. Kentucky, boy, kind of a disappointing. It's like you step up to the final boss. You get through the first 7 levels of Super Mario Brothers, and you're in level 8 against Bowser, and Bowser just stomps you, or Mike Tyson's Punch Out back in the day, right? You get all the way up to
Right.
Mike
You
Tyson,
get all the way up
and he
there.
just stomps you in like 45 seconds. That game was over early.
Yeah.
And boy, I mean, that's got to be so demoralizing to, get all revved up for this. You get your shot at the big boys. And if you don't win, you don't win. But they really got walked.
Yeah, they got walloped over there. It's just like they got smacked from start to finish. It was one of those things where we kept thinking, should Georgia be number one? And is Kentucky better than what we thought they were? Right. And then everything kind of played out the way it should have been. And we kind of got a real dose of reality. And it came back to, yes, Georgia is still the best team in the country. They are number one for the reason. They are a 2-time defending national champion because of what they have and the talent they have. And while Kentucky's a nice little upstart and they were 5-0 for the first time, and I don't know how long, they still aren't on the same level as playing with Georgia and the Alabamas and some of the other top echelon teams in the SEC. So it's a good measuring stick. And it kind of makes you, sometimes you can take it as, you can go either way, right? It can be, are we as good as we think we are? Okay, we're not. We're going to go back to the drawing board because there's still a chance that you can still get back to that title game if you went out. And so you can learn from this. You can kind of say, here's what Georgia did with, and here's what we didn't do well. And we're going to figure this out. But man, like they just got manhandled from start to finish. And Georgia looked like the number one team in the nation.
First
And
time all
Kentucky
year.
looked like, that was the first time all year they looked like Georgia. But sometimes it happens. Every team is different. Every team finds their groove and their stride at certain points of the year. And it was the right time for Georgia to find that stride. And it's not so much what Kentucky did or didn't do. It's more of to the point of what Georgia was able to do and what Georgia is capable of doing. They finally look like the team they were supposed to look like all season long.
Yeah, and if you had some money on Kentucky, you feel real foolish after the first quarter because that money was already flushed down the toilet. Next on the list is kind of a similar situation. We mentioned him last week, Lance Leipold and
Right.
Kansas, and another opportunity at kind of at a shot at the belt, and that yeah didn't go well either.
Well, Kansas, they had a chance to knock off and play Texas, right? And just didn't go the way they thought it was going to go. Like again, it was one of those measuring stick games of we're playing well. We're not sure how good we are. We know we have some talent. Texas showed they were definitely, and we'll talk about them later
Yep.
because they had a loss earlier against a really good opponent as well. But that's kind of how the college football season and the landscape has been shaking out. Like you kind of don't know who you are until you start playing quote unquote the big boys. And hey, Kansas, they lost. But what I love about it is they didn't let that loss dictate the rest of their season. They didn't sit back and say, man, we had an opportunity to really climb up in the polls and do some things. You know what? We lost. Let's put it behind us. Let's go back and play the opponent we have to play this week. And they took care of business. And so now you're looking at a team that's 5-1. And their only one loss was against the top three, the number three team in the country. Talking too fast, getting ahead of myself. So sorry. But that's one of those things where you're just like, listen, it can go one of two ways. And for Kansas and Coach Leopold, like they're playing really good football. They
Yeah.
have a really good quarterback. They run the ball extremely well. They're just fun to watch, and they're not going to be mentioned in the upper echelon teams. But this is a team that can get on the roll, and all of a sudden, when you talk about next year, when we start expanding it out and you start getting more teams, that's a team that I could see really can come in. Like, I don't know if they want to play them because they could be hitting on all cylinders and hitting in all gears and getting a really good groove. And you're like, you know what? From an offensive standpoint, they have a lot of weapons and a lot of things they do, and they just do some weird, funky things. And so it makes it sometimes hard for them to defend when they're hitting on all cylinders like that.
And they'll be maybe one of the favorites next year in the new Big 12 with Oklahoma and Texas leaving. And you're going
Right.
to bring in Cincinnati and BYU, but that's not Oklahoma and Texas. And you're
No,
going to
it's
get to a
not.
point where it feels like Kansas is going to be able to athletically match up with basically anybody in that conference. And I feel like he's one of the best coaches in America. So you're right. Like if you take the rest of this season, really build a base for next year, I think you have a legit shot to maybe win that new Big 12 in
Absolutely.
Kansas next year. So we talk about Notre Dame coming up here, but this is a big end run for Kansas. Your season's not over clearly, but man,
Absolutely.
you can really lay a base for next year, and the landscape really opens up once Oklahoma and Texas are kind of out of your way, and when it goes
Absolutely.
to 12. So next two on the list, LSU at 22, and then my Fighting Irish at 21. Let's get out of the way. Our boy Brian Kelly. Did you hear his horrendous joke about Columbia Jackets last week?
I did not.
He ended
I'm
his
not a
press
big Brian
conference.
Kelly fan. So
It made Sports Center because they were going to play Missouri, who plays in Columbia, Missouri. And at the end of the press conference, he goes, "Oh, make sure everybody brings their Columbia jackets." And no one in the press said anything. There was no response. He goes back to the mic and snarkily goes, "That was a joke, guys. Columbia jackets." Nobody said a word, and he walked off. And he's just so unlikable. He was unlikable at Notre Dame, but I tolerated him because he won. He's extremely unlikable at LSU. Their offense is amazing. Jaden Daniels is amazing to watch. Their defense, again, got torched by Missouri, who has a
yes.
pro prospect quarterback. I don't know if you watched any of that game, but they had a pro prospect quarterback and a receiver who really just lit LSU up early. Feels like LSU's talent finally won overall in the third and the fourth quarter. But God, is he unlikable?
Well, I missed the bring your Columbia Jackets, but I would have looked at him if I was there. Like, come on, dude, that's not even a funny joke. Like,
Yeah.
you could have made some. I mean, it would have been more funny if you walked in with a Columbia jacket on.
Yes,
Like,
fine.
okay, like there we go. I get it. I get what you're trying to do there. But again, this is one of those games that went back and forth. And we were texting during that, like, hey, I love to see LSU not win certain games. And so I was like, oh man, Missouri, this is going to be a game that maybe they could probably pull us out, and then kind of cooler heads prevailed, and LSU was able to pull out the victory late in the game, high scoring game. So that's going to be very interesting to see as they go along in the SEC conference and start getting into more conference games. Can they, one, put up more points like that all season long, and two, if your defense is not going to stop anybody, what is Georgia and Alabama?
Yeah.
Alabama probably be close because right now Alabama's struggling to score points, but Georgia, even Tennessee can score points. So can they? What's that score going to look like? I mean, you can't win all the shootouts all the time. You're going to have to figure out how to play some defense. So they figured it out late, but yeah, they climb up one spot.
They brought in a defense. I don't know if you saw it. They brought in a defensive consultant, and his first year coaching was 1964. Okay, so it was some like old coach of Brian Kelly's. 1964 was his first year coaching. So you're kind of desperate if you're bringing in a defensive consultant from the 60s to try to help your defense. And frankly, he didn't do anything this week because they really got torched.
They gave up a lot of points this week. You're right. Yeah. That was a lot of points.
Next on the list, I'm just going to shake my head here. That was painful. A couple of thoughts. We have no playmakers on the outside, and this was it going into the season. This was going to be a thing. So the old receivers coach, his name was Dell Alexander for Notre Dame, and he did, frankly, just a poor job. His recruiting was poor, development was poor. They had a couple of guys leave from the transfer portal, and you knew it was going to be a down year for receivers. They weren't able to bring anybody in the transfer portal. You hoped that Tobias Merriweather, Jaden Thomas could step up and be starters, and maybe Jaden Greathouse, a couple of the freshmen could come in. They made 2 catches in the second half, Marlon. 2 catches from scholarship receivers in the second half. Their only big play was a walk-on who I, as a really big Notre Dame fan, had never heard of. He had the long touchdown pass. They had no playmakers. So then Louisville, had a great defensive game plan, load the box, stop Audric Estime, and we were dead in the water. And you could tell it early. They also were a little flat. The Ohio State game, the Duke game, USC next week. So this felt like kind of an emotional letdown. This was Louisville. It felt like Louisville's Super Bowl. Like, the crowd was really into it. The coaching staff was really into it. You're going to always get, like you at Ohio State, Notre Dame's going to always get everybody's best shot. That's the circled game, whatever else. But, man, Sam Hartman can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit, and we don't have any playmakers. We don't have any playmakers on the outside. And this is finally where it showed up, where, the defense just couldn't keep holding up week after week after week when you're only scoring, 13 points and then a touchdown in garbage time. So I worry that next week is going to be ugly because Caleb Williams is going to put up 35 on anybody.
Yeah, but they don't play defense. I mean,
no, they don't play defense.
Talk about them, so that might help. That might bode well for you guys.
We're gonna have to go back to the 60s and play some 3 tight end I formation. Hold the ball, grow the grass. Because man, I don't know. I worry that we're gonna be able to. I don't know if we can score 20 on anybody right now. It's tough.
It is tough, but you bring up a great point, right? And we always talk about. When you talk about the upset, I think everybody went into this game really thinking Notre Dame was definitely the better team. You weren't sure what this Louisville team was going to look like. I mean, you guys were 10 or 11, maybe 12. They were 25. So they had just cracked into the top 25, and everybody's like, "What is Louisville all about?" Jeff Brom. Or what? Yeah.
Yes, Jeff Brom.
Yes, Jeff Brom.
And Brian Brom is the offense coordinator.
Brothers. So what are the Brom brothers going to do? Can they come in? Can they stop this Notre Dame team? You talk about everything that's going to come into, but they did a really good job, to your point, of making them one-dimensional. And when you make any team one-dimensional, you can kind of play into what you do well. Louisville is going to give you a lot of formations on offense and defense, kind of give you different looks and say, okay, figure it out. Make sure you understand how we're going to try to attack you. And you guys had no playmakers. You had nobody that could create separation when they wanted to go man-to-man. They brought pressure from different places. And it was just kind of crazy to see because you knew that you wanted to try to run the ball and really just keep the clock moving and really try to control it and kind of wear them down and see if the big offensive line can really dominate in the second half. And that just didn't happen. They were scoring points at will. They got up and it was like, okay, now we've got to change our game plan. And you guys aren't built for being able to come behind. Once you get down by 10 points, it's a hard kind of ask to do for the way your roster is built because you don't have the blazers that you need on the outside. You're really a run first. You're more your best weapon besides your running backs is your tight end.
Mitchell Evans, who before this year was an afterthought because of Michael Mayer. And
right.
He's had a fantastic year. And he's been like the most pleasant surprise. But when he is your downfield threat, that's a problem.
That's a problem. Yeah, you're right. That's a problem. But I think you guys will get better. Again, you're laying the foundation for something different. And are there issues and challenges? Yes. But that's the way a lot of teams find out what they need to go get in the
Yeah.
offseason and into the next recruiting season is I need a dynamic playmaker. I need a speedier back. Like, yeah, you got two backs that are really good and that can pound it, but you need a breakaway guy. You need a guy that if I can throw a screen to him and he can pop it and take it 65, 70 yards, you need one of those. And so where you get them, whether it's recruiting or going through the transfer portal, you're going to have to add some more dynamic playmakers to really say this is going to be the year that Notre Dame gets over the hump.
Yeah, that was the thought before the season. I mean, Chris Tyree is their slot receiver, and he's a converted running back. So you were just kind of piecing it all together, and you thought
Yep.
you hoped that Sam Hartman was able to throw guys open and make everybody around him better, which I think he's done. But he's not Superman either, and he's not real mobile,
Nope.
so he doesn't add that threat, of the mobile quarterback. So I'm watching that game, and it felt like I was at the dentist. I mean, it was tough to watch, and at no point did I feel like they were going to have an explosive play or an explosive drive to really kind of change things and turn that game around. And it felt to me early that they were in trouble, and unfortunately that came up. Next on the list, number 19, Tennessee. They beat South Carolina. I'll be honest, I didn't see any of it. I feel like we probably know how that game went. Tennessee just kind of probably out-talented South Carolina, and they're set up pretty well here to make a run in the SEC East.
Yeah, I mean, they've got an opportunity to make a run here. They had their loss to Florida early or a couple weeks ago, but that's the thing. Like one loss, depending on when it hits, really can help either make or break your season. And Tennessee, it's like, hey, we just got to run the table. That's it. That's the only thing they have is to run the table and try to get to that SEC championship. And they still have the opportunity to do that. Florida's got 2 losses on the season, so and they're gonna lose some more games as well. So that's gonna bode well for Tennessee to kind of see what they can do. They've still got some tough games to come up and play, but definitely it wasn't a surprise in my eyes to see Tennessee win that game at all.
Right. Next two on the list played each other, actually. And thankfully, the voters got it right and have the team UCLA ahead of Washington State, who they just beat. That game was real sleepy. It was like 6-3 at the half, which is really odd for a Pac-12. Chip Kelly. Like, what do you think happened to Chip Kelly? Like, what an interesting story. He was the big thing at Oregon, and then he gets the huge NFL contract with the Eagles, and it didn't really work out. And they actually, went to the Super Bowl after he left. Then he goes to UCLA, which I feel like is, man, like what a great place for him to land. Fertile recruiting ground. Get all the playmakers, and they're 4-1, and they're ranked 18th, and they're they're a good solid team, but they're not. He hasn't been anywhere close to what he was at Oregon.
No, but I mean, as much as we want to say, hey, you've got fertile recruiting grounds there, like it's UCLA. So when you think about it, like they hadn't been good in a long time, and so people were thinking that the Chip Kelly name would maybe get more recruits to come there. You still got to have talent. You still got to win games, and so they weren't doing that, even though he was there. Like they're going to win a few games here and there. I think this is probably I've always said so far this year that the Pac-12 is probably the best conference that I've seen play so far from top to bottom. And this is an example of why, right? So we always say the Pac-12, they don't play defense. Well, they play defense.
Yeah.
Like they play defense against a team that scored a lot of points. Like Washington State, they were known for being able to score some points. And UCLA stymied them. They did some really good things. Their defense made play after play after play. And so it was just fun to watch and kind of look at the highlights and see what they were doing and keep an eye on that game. Cause I'm like, hey, when we look at who is the buzz team in the Pac-12, Colorado, and what they can do, I'm trying to look at their schedule. Like, okay, if they can get 6 wins, they're going to be bowl eligible. So who can they beat? And you're kind of going through like, hey, that UCLA game, is that, I don't know. They should win that game. That Arizona game, they should probably win. Well, UCLA gave Washington State all they could handle, came up with a great victory when people didn't think they were going to. So now the Pac-12 is kind of all over who's going to be where they should be, but great win. And again, I always like to point out former Bills and their kids. So Bruno Fina plays left tackle at UCLA and is doing a good job there. But it was a good win and one that Chip Kelly should definitely be proud of for his team, because they did everything right. They made all the right adjustments. They made all the right plays. They did everything they needed to do to win a good game against a really good football team. So I'm glad that the polls and the voters rewarded UCLA, moving them up ahead of Washington State.
Now, sore subject here, maybe for you. Have you ever been at the Rose Bowl, like at the stadium itself?
No,
I hate to ask.
no. Should have been there, but because of some rules back in the day, we didn't get to go play in the Rose Bowl.
Right. I just didn't know if you had
So,
ever been there, even as a fan. It just looks like the most incredible setting in college football, right? I mean, I know
right,
there are some amazing places, but nothing beats 5 o'clock Eastern on January 1st.
true,
Just looking at that stadium just makes you think college football. And it's kind of crazy because the crowd wasn't great. You know, they got a lot of it
right.
topped off, you know, and I'd say they maybe had 40,000 people there, which I get it. It's LA and it's kind of a tough ticket sometimes, but man, like you'd like a full Rose Bowl is just a great setting.
Right, but that's what makes it so hard to recruit there, right? Because there's so much other things to go on, and people don't come and watch them, and USC is getting all the attention. So when USC is really good, really nobody's trying to go to UCLA.
They're like
just
they're
the
like
way
the
recruiting falls out.
Clippers. UCLA like the
Yes, like the
Clippers.
Lakers Clippers.
Yeah, same dynamic, right? It's really
Right,
that's really true. Next on the list, Duke, recovered from their narrow loss to Notre Dame. You know, they had a bye this week. Hopefully they
right.
recover. Nice to see that their quarterback is actually questionable next week coming up after taking that
Fingers
nasty
crossed. Yeah,
leg
he had that
injury
really
at the end of
bad
the
leg
year.
injury.
Because he's got some pro prospects and some pro hopes coming up. So I was happy to see that he seemed to have bounced back from that injury.
Yes. Yep.
All right, who's next on the list? I just accidentally cut it off for a second here.
We said Utah. Utah's next.
Utah. So speaking of quarterbacks, like, is Cam Rising going to ever play? This is weird. Like he's been kind of like week to week for 5 weeks in a row now.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you just don't really want to rush it because of, again, they already have one loss, and so you're kind of like, listen, we can still run the table, we can still get to where we were last year because they knocked off USC last year, and so for them it's kind of like, I want to make sure he's correct, I want to make sure he's ready to go, and I don't want to put him out there and then have us possibly lose another game, and two, mess up whatever rest of the career he has, right? So again, I applaud them for putting the player first and kind of saying, listen, he's not ready, let's not put him out there. I want to make sure he can go out there, he doesn't think about this injury, he can go out there and turn it loose and make all the plays, because you can't simulate game speed no matter how much you do it in practice, no matter how much you try to do, even in a rehab scenario, you can't simulate that. So to put him out there at 80% or 75%, it's not going to do your team any well. It's not going to do him any justice. So, yeah, I would take my time. And so I understand why they're taking their time. It's kind of like what the Bills did with Trey White last year, when it just kind of let it go until he was ready to go mentally. And then he was able to work himself back into playing shape and do other things you do, because, again, you can't condition the way you want to. So there's a lot of things that goes into it. And the speed of the game is just so much faster right now when you haven't taken too much reps.
Sure, that's true. And Utah is one of those programs, seems to do everything right. The
Yes.
coach is real disciplined. I could totally see him, player safety first. Cam Rising's a fun football player. Utah is fun to watch. They're not, I wouldn't call them explosive, but they're tough. And they wore USC down last year. Like they wore them out late. And I like Utah, and I enjoy watching them. Sometimes I wish Notre Dame was more like Utah, and just how crisp and how they're fundamentally sound on every play, and you feel like you're going to get the best of what they have to offer athletically on every single play. They're just well coached,
Yep.
They're disciplined, and it's like, man, if my team could be that well coached and that disciplined with the athletic talent they have, I feel like, anyways, let's move on. Of number 15, Oregon State. They had a win over Cal. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a shootout.
Cares.
It was like a 52-40 shootout. Like, Oregon State has been scoring points. They've got just an interesting offense. Again, we talked about the Pac-12 earlier in some of our episodes of just how many points they were putting up each team. So this is, again, another team that can score a lot of points, but they've got some showdowns coming. They still get to play USC. They still get to play the cream of the crop. They've got Oregon. So, it's going to be fun to watch, but they got a victory. Now they're up in the rankings, and we're going to see what it looks like, because,
of course,
Pac-12's got a lot of teams still ranked.
And of course, we're both cheering for the Pac-2 of next year, Oregon State and Washington State. I saw an article, and I was going to send it to you, that so they're still exploring a merger with the Mountain West because those two teams are really in limbo right now. And they actually
Yes,
had a
they're in
really
limbo.
interesting idea where they might split the Mountain West into 2 tiers, and it would be more of like a relegation system where there'd be an upper division and a lower division, and they'd add North and South Dakota as well to round it out to make it, I think, 16. And there'd be an
Ooh.
8-team upper division with Oregon State and Washington State and then 6 other teams. And then whoever would finish last in the upper division would go down to the lower division the next year. And the team that was, that won the lower division would go up for scheduling purposes, etc. So that was, it's out there as like a flyer. I think it's a way
That's
to generate
interesting.
interest in a lesser conference. I think it's probably inevitable that those teams are going to join the Mountain West. They really don't have anywhere else to go. I don't
Yeah, nowhere to
see
go.
they have nowhere to go. So I think you just try to
Nowhere.
make the Mountain West as appealing as possible. I don't know. We'll have to follow that one. I
Yeah,
read that
that's an
article.
interesting thought, because San Diego or South Dakota State, like, why?
Yeah,
Like,
because you need a number and you start them all the way at the bottom, right? It's like,
but they always, like, they're in the FCS championships,
yeah,
like, all the time. Like, why would I give that up when I know I'm going to possibly play for a national championship
money
every
talks,
year?
Marlon.
Money
Money
talk, yeah,
talks.
but how much money we talking, really?
Well,
Like,
I guess that's probably what the holdup is, right? And North Dakota. I mean, North Dakota would be an interesting, North Dakota State would be an interesting team to get, to play with the big boys. They've had guys over the years,
yeah,
Carson Wentz, that weird dome that they play in. That's
yeah.
more like an arena. I'd be for it. I mean, it's something a little funky, a little different.
Yep. Yeah, but I don't know if I'm one of those guys. Like, would I want to be relegated to the lower division?
True.
Like, like
True.
no. Like, either you bring me in and you make it an east or north and the south, or east and the west, however you want to split it up. But at this point, like, why? Like, I would stay where, especially, and I'm probably confusing North Dakota State and South Dakota State, but North Dakota State is always
Yes. The
winning
Bison.
national
Yes.
championships. Like, they're good. Like, so why would I give up the history of what we always do and the ability to go play for a national championship pretty much every year, and give that up to go to the Mountain West?
Only one reason.
But you're not even going to be guaranteed to get to the playoffs. So
right.
why?
Money talks, and I mean, you could also call like the lower division, like that's already the Big Ten, right? That's the Big Ten West.
Yeah,
that's basically the lower division of the Big Ten. I mean, in name only, I guess, but man, watching some of that football is tough. All right, we'll keep going here. We talked about Louisville at 14. I don't need to talk anymore about Louisville.
Nope.
I'm over Louisville.
Sure you don't want to hear that.
No, we're done. Number 13 on the list, my guy Lane Kiffin, who helped beat Brian Kelly the week before, still winning. They squeezed one out against Arkansas. They're in a good position too. They're ranked 13. They got one loss. Everything's still in front of them. A lot of these SEC teams have already taken one loss. But, until you get that second loss, you're always alive in the SEC.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. Number 12, North Carolina. They put the beat down on Syracuse. Like that
they
was.
Sure did.
So now have you been following the story of the kid who got suspended and they just made him eligible to play? I'm curious your thoughts there and your thoughts on Drake May, who probably is going to be the number 2 pick in the draft.
I like Drake May a lot. He can make every throw. He's fun to watch, and he has a really good command of the offense. So it's just been fun just to watch what they've been able to do. And I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a big Carolina fan, but I do like to watch college football a lot. So I followed his name and what he's been able to do and accomplish there. And it's been fun just to watch them win games. Like they're 5-0, still rolling, and finally glad to see the receiver really get the opportunity to be eligible. Like the NCAA, really, they crack me up because they make so many decisions on who should be eligible, who should not be eligible. They never really take into account all the scenarios, right? It's just, oh no, he shouldn't be eligible. Well, he did this, he did that. Like, you got to allow the kids leeway. Nobody penalizes coaches when they take new jobs and leave. Like, they get to go coach right off the bat, right? So
Kelly
again, yes, it happens all the time, right? And so again, you've got to figure this out. Like, it wasn't like he was trying to cheat the system or do anything. It's just, he needed to take care of business, and he did that. And so for them to say he wasn't eligible because of their little rules, it just blows my mind, because it makes there's no rhyme or reason. You've allowed some guys to come in and transfer because of the right dollar amount and the right programs, and then you penalize a kid. But finally they got it fixed and they got him eligible, and he's going to make an impact for the rest of the season. So I'm
Can
looking forward to
you
watching.
can you take me back to when you were in college? Was there one rule in particular or one scenario? Maybe it was involving you, maybe it was involving a teammate. Is there one thing in particular that I would just roll my eyes at? Anybody listening would be like, "Oh my God, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard."
Well, I mean, the rules are totally different when I was back in school because I'm an
Right.
old man.
Yeah, give me one from the old school that was like, "Oh God."
But like you couldn't even transfer. Like if you wanted to transfer, you had to sit out for a year. Like it didn't really matter.
Insane.
Like so I would have had to transfer to all the way down to like Division 3 or FCS. Like I couldn't transfer anywhere within the FBS now, which we call it old Division 1. You sat out for a complete year, so you had to transfer down a level to go play immediately, so you wouldn't really miss it. And then if you transferred up coming in, still you sat out for a year. So either way it goes, it was just kind of one of those crazy things where you're just like, this makes no sense on these transfer rules because things change. And so the only way really out of it was you would have to then go ask the university to release you from your scholarship. So if they didn't have somebody coming in comparable to your talent level, or if you were a 5-star or blue chip back in the day, then no, they didn't release you out of your scholarship, and then you had to transfer and sit out a year.
That's all. Were there some rules too about? I mean, even like I've always heard like minor petty stuff about food, or like
Yeah,
a
like
coach couldn't somebody couldn't buy you a sandwich.
No,
or
like
some
if I said, Coach, I'm hungry, I missed them. Hey, I can't buy you like lunch. Like you're gonna get in trouble. Like it was just weird. Like, and your scholarships were like a certain dollar amount. So the way they got around it was, now I'm not knocking it because people were like, well, you got to go to school for free and you got room, book, board, and tuition covered, and I'm completely grateful. But then you would get $75 for the entire month, right? And be like, hey, this is extra. This is it. Like, so,
$75. Wow.
That's it. That's going to last you for the entire month. I'm like, I got to do laundry. I got to do a few other things that I've got to pay for. So it was kind of just one of those things where the NCAA just really wasn't realistic on certain things. And so you just kind of shake your head like, I can't believe that they had these type of crazy rules. Like I've had friends, and I was in a situation at Ohio State because I had a full academic scholarship and a full athletic scholarship to go to Ohio State. And so I had to make a decision on which one I wanted to choose. And I chose the athletic scholarship, and I ended up losing money. Like I ended up having to give back grants and other scholarships and things that I earned from trying to do well in the classroom, because the NCAA says, well, your scholarship can only be worth a certain dollar amount, and anything extra normally as a student goes into your pocket, right? So, if school is 10,000 and you got grants and scholarships worth 15, that extra money went into your pocket. And that became extra living expenses that you could do things with. Whereas I had to give those things back as a player taking the athletic scholarship. And so just kind of, when you think about it, just kind of crazy the way the NCAA does things. Back then, now it's definitely better with NIL. So I'm not knocking what the guys have been able to get
but
now
they were
at all.
forced. They were
forced. They were forced to go to that. They'll go that route, or else they would still be trying to make
court
the amount of money
mandated,
that
like
they were doing.
legitimately forced. And you can't escape the idea that there's a bunch of old white dudes sitting in a room in Kansas City or Indianapolis or wherever the NCAA is, dictating these ridiculous rules, about you can't go to a movie, you can't get a sandwich, and then obviously I'm sure there are hundreds or thousands of examples of guys getting money under the table, whatever else, but to ding guys for just these minor, like parking ticket infractions just seems so crazy to me and so out of touch with how much money was in the game. And like you said, the coaches are free agents like immediately after they sign their contract. They can walk out. Brian Kelly left before Notre Dame was even done with the season. They still had a shot to make the college football playoff, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm out on a recruiting visit." And he didn't get dinged. He didn't get dinged. He got rewarded for it. He got rewarded for it with a huge contract. Right. So that's, I mean, as a young player, man, that animosity would build up in me. The problem is, what do you get mad at? Like the NCAA? Well, okay, well, what is that? Like who?
You just kind of have to take it. Like, and I think that's to the point of why so many people just don't like Deion's approach and how he's trying to do it and build it in Colorado, because it's not what we're accustomed to. It's not what we've always seen as far as the trajectory and the path and the plan laid out of this is how you go and become a head coach in the NCAA. You go this route, you do here, you go be this position, you go work here, you might become a head coach at a Division 2 or Division 3 school, and then you go maybe try to go to a MAC school and then go get your opportunity to go to a bigger school. You go and recruit, you do all these things that the NCAA and then people that have come before him said, go this route, do this thing, and do it this way, and you build a program this way, and he's not doing it that way. And that's why a lot of people are just like, you know what, I don't, the NCAA, that's not the way you do it. It's wrong. And so whether you like him or hate him, that time will tell on if his approach is the right approach. But there's definitely a new way to try to recruit, and there's new things that you can do to be outside of the box to make your team relevant faster than the way it used to. Because before it was just all about grabbing the money, right? Like I know as a coach, if I go become a head coach at a Power 5 school, I'm going to get at least 4 years out of it, right? They're going to allow me to at least get my recruiting class in, and we're going to get 4 years to see if it works. And if not, they're going to fire me. And if I get one good season, I might get an extension, and then there's a buyout clause. So it was always to put money into the pockets of the coaches that were probably going to eventually get fired. And so this way is a little different. And so it's kind of fun, but it's going to be interesting to see. And then we talk about North Carolina. We'll jump back into that top 25 because Alabama is 11. And we've been talking about Alabama just not accustomed to seeing their offense. But I think they found their quarterback in Milroe. And so they're going to play him for the rest of the season. It's not pretty sometimes when they win, but they're starting to make plays when they need to make plays on the offense side of the ball. They can run the ball still. Their offensive line is starting to play better, starting to be that type of Alabama offensive line that we've seen before. And Milroe is not making those mistakes that we saw early in the season that cost them that Texas game. But you're still going to have some of those growing pains. But Alabama is still one of those one-loss SEC teams that are where they need to be, right?
And they also get the benefit of the doubt, rightfully so. They're Alabama.
Yeah,
so if they have one loss and they run through, they run the table here. They beat Georgia. They're clearly in. Texas A&M has to be the most disappointing team in college football, right? Unlimited facilities, unlimited dollars. They pay their coach unlimited amount of money every year. They've got 105,000 crazy people down there. They got that weird, yell leader and all that crazy nonsense that they do. They do those midnight yell practices, and they're just mediocre. And they've been mediocre now for quite a long time with a bunch of 5 stars. I think they have the most 5 stars in the country. What a disappointment every year from them.
Yeah, disappointment. They always make a lot of noise. They make some splash recruits. They look good on paper. But again, that's why we say you still got to play it on the field. And for some reason, the scheme that they try to employ just doesn't translate well in the SEC. So it might have worked back when they were when they were in the back in the Pac-12. It might work in the Big 12. But in the SEC, the way they try to play and the way they try to spread you out and do some things is just not working. And teams like Alabama take advantage on it. Teams like Georgia handle them. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The buyout clause is too crazy on them to get rid of. So watch your
guy Dion, because there's probably some rich Texas oil billionaire who might be willing to buy out Jimbo and bring somebody
it's a lot. I don't think it gets even where you could be like, I could take paying this amount of money until 2 more years. So you've got 2 more years of mediocrity before you can say, hey, you know what? We might go ahead and exercise this buyout clause. But yeah, they're not going to be in contention anytime soon.
That's a weird program. Number 10, USC. They dropped a spot because it felt like kind of a trap look ahead game against Arizona. They're, like I said to you, I feel like they're going to put up 35 against anybody. They gave up 41 to Arizona, in overtime.
Points.
Their defense is terrible. It's just, they don't have enough playmakers. I don't like the scheme they run, and it feels like it's not complementary to their offense. They get up early on everybody.
Right.
And it's I don't understand. Their defense just shouldn't be that bad.
No, I mean, you're right. The scheme is it's interesting. You scratch your head and you're like, what were they doing there? Why are they running that defense? And we thought that this should have been a blowout. Arizona shouldn't even been on the field with them. But Arizona held their own. It was fun to watch that game. I was up until 2:30 watching this game in triple overtime, just going back and forth. It was so much fun. And I will say to all Buckeye, if there's any Buckeye fans listening, the Buckeye tie here with Arizona is former running back Scotty Graham is the running back coach at Arizona. And their running backs ran all over USC. So, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a total loss. I think if you guys can establish the run, there's definitely some issues with USC being able to stop the run. So you got 2 good running backs. I think that's the way you try to go. You're going to have to go try to play your strength.
It's gonna be 3 yards in a cloud of dust about 50 times. It's gonna be concerned, and that's the only way we can win that game. So we don't want a track meet, obviously. Next game, our next team was in a track meet. Number 9, they dropped 6 spots, which I feel like is harsh. I understand we're in the land of the undefeateds here. That was an even up game. One of the craziest first quarters I think I've ever seen. There was a blocked punt for a touchdown. There was a fake punt. There were 2 interceptions. The first quarter ended, and you were like, whew. It took an hour and 5 minutes to play the first quarter. There were like 3 reviews. It was crazy. It was so enjoyable to watch. I love everything about that game. I love the setting of it at the Texas State Fair. I love that it's 50-50 down the middle. You know, the teams clearly hate each other. There's talent all over the field. I love that game every year, and this one did not disappoint.
It did not disappoint. It was everything you thought it was going to be, and it was the drama of who can take the lead first, who can come back and take the lead, who can hold the lead. And I'm watching this game like whoever has the ball last is going to win. And Oklahoma made some amazing throws late.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel.
Great plays. Like, it was just so much fun to watch that game. And I just sat there and shook my head like, I can't believe some of the things that even some of the calls, you're just kind of like, all right, like, I know that I could go on this. Oh my gosh, like, wow, he's wide open. Like, oh gosh, like,
yeah,
that was a great throw. That's a great throw and catch. And then you're just kind of shaking your head like, there's not enough time for what they're going to do. Like, but great game. It was one of those games where you're like, I'm sad to see one of these teams lose. I was hoping it would go to overtime to watch more football. But congratulations to Oklahoma. They pulled it out. And that was one of the schools I wanted to go to when I was younger. So I
don't blame you.
Root for them sometimes.
There you go. I enjoy watching a Steve Sarkisian offense. I think he's one of the smartest play callers in college football. I'm actually really impressed with Brent Venables. Like, to have the offense that he has, being a defensive guy coming from Clemson. You know, they had a rough season last year. They got whitewashed by Texas last year, and you could tell it meant a lot to them to come back, be competitive, and then to knock off their rival. And that was an epic last drive by Dylan Gabriel. Like, that was fun to watch. That was fun to watch.
That was clutch throw after clutch throw. Like, they made some plays. The play calling was perfect though. They definitely got into a groove and just put him in the right scenarios, and he made the right reads and the right throws. And you're just shaking your head like, man, who's going to make a play? Can somebody on Texas side make a play? And no, they couldn't.
The ball gets rolling down the hill, right, on a drive like that, and it just feels like bang, 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 and they're already at your 20, and now you're 1 play away from losing. A team that was not 1 play away from losing, Oregon, who stomped Stanford. I don't know if you saw a picture of the crowd at Stanford. It was light. Stanford becoming a part of the Big Ten next year is, I don't know, them and Cal. It just, I get why they did it, but man, that's tough. Like, they don't draw out there to begin with, and now you're going to have some, the classic like Northwestern Stanford game, or Illinois Stanford in or Rutgers against Stanford in a Big Ten matchup. They're in tough shape. David Shaw did a great job there in the 2010s. They were right up there with Notre Dame. They played, they were top 10, they were top 5. They played some classic games against Notre Dame. They knocked us off a couple times when we had to look at the playoff. It's a tough place to win, right?
Right. Not now.
Now it's not a tough place to lose now. They're as far away from competitiveness as you can imagine. And now going to the Big Ten next year, man, that's a tough job. That might be one of the toughest jobs in America in the Power 5, right?
It's going to be tough. And it goes back to recruiting and the transfer portal, right? And so when guys are saying, hey, I want to come, I want to play now, I want to showcase what my ability, that's not what you think of. You don't think of going to Stanford. And so it's always been kind of hard to recruit there when they're down. Like, when they're winning, everybody wants to go there. The weather's great, right? Like, the environment, that, to your point, is great when you're winning. When you're losing, it's hard to turn that around. So they're going to have to get the right coach. They're going to have to get the right players in. And that's where the transfer portal comes into play. So you could really say, yeah, there's not a fun place to play now, but in a year or two, you get enough players that's coming in that have been in other programs. Like, I want to win now. I've got 2 years left to show that I can make it to the next level and make that jump. You can build and flip that roster really quickly and get some people in there. And all of a sudden, where you thought Stanford might have been a liability, all of a sudden you're laughing and saying, man, Stanford could out here win the West. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
No. I hear you. You need one.
It can happen.
They need a quarterback, right? They need a
guy. It starts there.
Either a legacy guy, or the kid of somebody who went to Stanford, or John Elway's nephew, or somebody to come in there and turn that around, because they need the quarterback first. To get the quarterback, absolutely, they might be able to get some guys. But man, I don't envy the coach there. I think that's a tough one. A team on a bye. a bye, number 7, probably the best offense in maybe college football, and a quarterback that I don't know if the general public yet knows who he is.
I
You're
know
going to
who he
find out.
is.
You know
I
who
know
they are.
exactly who he
Anybody
is.
who's listening to this show, I'm sure knows who he is. But Michael Penix Jr., they might be the most fun team in college football.
Yeah, they score on so many different ways, and he I remember him from what 2 years now, 2 years, 2.5 years when we went toe to toe during that COVID year, and he was at Indiana, and we were just going back and forth, and he put up 500 yards of passing against my Buckeyes, and we were trying to figure out where our defense was, and we ended up winning late with was it that was CJ's year. So yeah, I mean, I know exactly who he was. I knew he was a great quarterback then. And then he had the ACL injury later on that season, and he ends up transferring, and he is picking up right where he left off. He can throw the rock. Right now, probably my Heisman Trophy favorite. As far as quarterbacks, like the numbers he's putting up just puts him in a different category. But he's got some games coming up, and they're playing well and ranked where they should be. But they still get to play Oregon. They still get to play USC. So they still get to play Utah. It's going to be fun to watch the Pac-12 and what's going to happen. And so I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I think they still have Colorado on their schedule as well. So, but they play good defense. They play I'm not going to say good defense. They play decent defense. They can slow people down. So it's going to be interesting to see when they play Oregon, because Oregon's defense definitely, I would say, is probably the best defense that I've seen out of that Pac-12 conference so far. And they stop people. They can beat you up. They come downhill. So it's going to be fun to see when that matchup and when they play Oregon.
Absolutely. So a few more to go here. We got about 10 minutes left in our show. Number 6, Penn State. I know a personal favorite of yours. The Nittany Lions, they took care of business against Northwestern.
Sure
Number
did.
6, they're basically, I think, looking 2 weeks from now, the Ohio State
Yeah,
Penn
we
State
got them
showdown.
at noon in the shoe.
Okay, so we're going to keep moving. We talked about Oklahoma, who, jumped 7 spots to number 5 and is the leader in the clubhouse in the Big 12. Number 4, the Florida State Seminoles, who are kind of under the radar, I think, right now after their couple of big wins early. They beat Virginia Tech, who's another one of those teams where I feel like the name Virginia Tech is still from the Michael Vick era, but beating Virginia Tech now is really not all that much of a accomplishment, whatever else. But they slide in at number 4, and I feel like their big games are down the road, and they're
right.
to me they're one of the teams that is a favorite to make the college football playoff because of the ACC schedule and the ACC conference. I think they're the clear favorite there.
Absolutely, I think they have complete sides, offense, defense, special teams. I think they definitely would be my favorite to win the ACC. So again, they've got to go win it, but they have the talent, the quarterback play. They can run the ball. They have receivers, and again, they brought in some guys from the transfer portal as well. So they've got talent on the outside, and they have big receivers too. Like all the receivers are like 6'3", and really tall, like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and they make plays and they can run. So it's gonna be fun. They've got some guys they've got to play in the ACC, so they still got a schedule that they got to figure out. But when you look at it, like, hey, there was a showdown coming down with them and Syracuse earlier, and they went through and took care of business there. So now you're like, all right, they're in the driver's seat. They're ranked number 4. Now let's see if they can just run the table. And I want to say, I believe they end the season with Florida or
Florida.
Is it Miami?
They always end with Florida.
So again, they're going to end that season with Florida, the rivalry game, the in-state game. But again, that's going to be something that, win or lose, that's not going to stop them from getting where they want to be as far as being in the ACC championship.
I feel like they're the one, you could almost write it in pen. I feel like they're maybe the biggest lock to make the college football playoff, just because Georgia still has to play Alabama and has the SEC schedule, whereas Florida State won't have as many roadblocks. All right, Marlon, we got a few minutes left. I'm going to skip ahead to number 2, and that team up north, who I've noticed they haven't really played anybody yet.
No, they haven't played anybody yet. But you know what? They're winning it. And the name of the game right now is win, right? So you can only beat the people that are on your schedule. You don't necessarily get to make your schedule as a player. So you just go out and say, do we take care of business? They've taken care of business. And they've got some showdowns coming up. They're going to play Penn State. They've got us coming up. They've got Michigan State. Well, they should win that Michigan State game, so we won't even add that to the schedule.
It's a light schedule this year. They didn't
very light for them.
They didn't have a real marquee out of conference game, and Michigan State's clearly down, which is always a tough game for them.
Right.
I feel like they're gonna. I'd be surprised if they don't walk into the Saturday after Thanksgiving 11-0. I'd be surprised.
I would expect them to be 11-0 walking
Yeah.
into that game. If they lost, I would shake my head and be like, I don't understand how they lost that game, because
Right.
right now they run the ball very well. Their good quarterback he's playing okay, but I like Corum. I think he's a really good running back, and he makes plays. So we're going to see what it is. And this is one of those games where, as we segue into my Buckeyes, since they're the number 3 team, and we've already talked
I
about
was gonna
Georgia.
leave the last 5 minutes for you. Let me
So
just for the people
here we
listening
go.
though, let me say something real quick. So Marlon texted me during like the second quarter of the game, and I know that Saturday morning you had watched the movie Halloween, and you texted me that watching the first half of that Ohio State game was like watching the movie Halloween. And I have to say, I turned to my buddy who it's our final week of camping at Jellystone, and I turned to him and I said, it was enjoyable to me, and it was refreshing that you, as a former player and somebody who watches the game differently than 99% of people, you were watching it as a fan and you were pissed off because they just looked like they looked terrible. And it was just,
terrible.
Obviously,
oh my gosh.
I enjoyed the fact that you expressed yourself like I would, or like, Joe on the street would. And not to say that you're watching the game at some, ridiculously high level that anybody else can, but it's nice to see. It was nice to see you just express frustration at a fan level of, man, my team just not playing well right now.
They didn't play well at all, and it was mind-blowing to me, where clearly it was one of those games where I was like, okay, I don't think Ohio State's going to lose this game. Right? At no point did I think they were going to lose. It was just frustrating to see that their line couldn't get the push that we were looking for. Surprised that Travion wasn't going to play. So all of a sudden you kind of start hearing Travion's not playing. And then for some reason we can't establish the run. I mean, if you look at this, like, I don't understand how Ohio State really won the game. If you think about it, like, you're like Maryland did everything right, except our defense just played better. We didn't even score until Josh Proctor picked it off and took it back. And so that got the scoring going right on the offense side of the ball. Like, it just really blew my mind that when you look at Ohio State, we're known for being able to run the ball. We have that history with Woody Hayes and 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And we had 62 yards of rushing for the entire game when Maryland gave up so much rushing yards. Like, that was not what they were good at doing, stopping the run. And they did an amazing job of stopping the run. I think if our defense didn't play the way they played, I mean, you're talking about a team that averaged 30, almost 38, a little over 38 points a game. They could rush about 150 yards, 157 yards a game, threw for like 250, 260 yards, and we held them to 300 total yards. So, kudos to the defense. I thought the defense was really what made the difference in this game. Our defense made more plays than their defense, but clearly you have got to figure out how to get your offensive line to be more aggressive, how to get your offensive line to come off combo blocks and get to the second level. And Chip Trayanum, I like Chip Trayanum. I think he's going to be is a good running back, but he just didn't run with the intensity, and I don't know what that was. If it's just he didn't see the holes. So you've got to figure out if Henderson's not going to be there, then you better get the ball to Mayan Williams, because there was just people. I'm shaking my head like, what are we doing? Like, we could have given the ball to Hayden, like there's Dallin Hayden. Like, there were other running backs that I wanted to see, kind of maybe see if they could be a different spark that we went with 2 guys and they just didn't get it done. And then finally, McCord, we got the ball to him. He got the ball to Harrison late, and all of a sudden our offense started clicking, and it made it look like it was a less closer of a game than it actually was going into that fourth quarter. But that was one of those games where if we couldn't find Marvin Harrison Jr., then we would have been talking about an upset. And I think all game long, that's all I kept seeing from is Ohio State on upset alert. Like, they just didn't look like the number 3 team in the nation. But we've got Purdue coming up this week.
You got one more week to figure it out.
We've got this is the week you got to figure out. Like, the keys to victory this week is you've got to be able to establish a run. That O-line's got to fire off the ball and create lanes so the running backs to take care of it. And you've got to find and get McCord into a rhythm early, right? Like, it just looked like he was lost for the first half, couldn't figure out where to throw the ball to, and then all of a sudden it just clicked. So if you can get him in that rhythm early, then yes, I think then you can build up on something and go from there. But outside of that, Penn State is going to be the next big test, and you can't start slow against Penn State and think that they're going to just be slow, and you're going to figure it out in the fourth quarter and then distance yourself. Like, you're setting yourselves up for a loss, and one loss that this late in the season keeps you out of where you want to be.
Can I give you the key to the game against Purdue next week? It's just not the bus is just not getting into an accident. I think that's the key to the game. No offense to Purdue, but they're just going to get out athleted. And it's funny. I texted you right before that pick six, I'm like, I feel like the game's going to flip here. And then I could totally understand and sympathize with your frustration, because that's been me many times as a neutral observer. I'm like, oh yeah, they're going to pull away. Like they're, you'd seen that movie 20 times before. And
Right.
ironically enough, they covered. The spread was 19. So somehow they covered.
Somehow we did it.
What a terrible loss if you were a Maryland bettor. I mean, you were in the driver's seat the entire game, and then you didn't even cover 19, which is just kind of crazy. I've seen that game. It feels like I've seen that game from Ohio State 50 times before over the years, where you sleepwalk through the first half against a Big Ten opponent, and then you just make enough plays and you end up covering, or you end up winning by 20. And you're right, you can't do that against Penn State. You certainly can't do that against Michigan. Next week's the get right game, right? Next week's to figure everything out.
This is the last get right game that you have. And if you don't get right here, then you're going into a stretch where you're just like, I don't know what's going to happen, because whether you want to admit it or not, right? Like, yes, this is going to be one of those games. Purdue is there, but you got Penn State and then Wisconsin. And if you don't think that Wisconsin is going to give you everything that you can give, Luke Fickell is going to be ready to play. Like, so you can't come in and be like, oh, let's just figure it out. We're gonna kind of come in and kind of sleepwalk through the first half and then turn it on against one of those teams. You're not. And so they're going to be more defensive minded. They're going to try to take away the big play. And if we don't have the big play, I think that's what helped us really in the second half, was we had some big plays. Like, you got Stover on the long ball. You got Marvin Harrison. I don't know how he runs through the one guy that you have to pay attention to runs through the secondary all by himself. Like, those teams aren't going to make those type of mistakes and those type of errors. So we've got to figure it out this week in order to have it. And so I'm hopeful going forward, looking forward to it. I like playing Lafayette. Like, that was I like going there. I never lost to Purdue. So I can say that should be a victory. I agree with you there.
Yeah. And the big drum, right? Like, that's their thing at Purdue, is that giant, like the world's largest drum. So when that's your claim to fame, is there a trophy for the Ohio State Purdue game?
I'm sure there's something. I never really stopped. I hate to say that. I didn't stop to figure out what it was. Just kind of like on to the next one. Because they've always been kind of one of those teams where you're like, we should beat them, right? Yeah. Except for when they had a really good quarterback back in the day, in Drew Brees. He definitely put them on the map, and then they kind of faded. I think Kyle Orton was there as well. But outside of that, like, there really wasn't too much of anything as far as Purdue on our end of what we had to worry about. Like, the last time we played there, I took one back 100 yards. So
nice. And you know what? I found that clip of you against Wisconsin, and I can't wait to show that the Wisconsin week. And your reaction to blocking that field goal is amazing. And it's interesting that the rest of your teammates and your coach were a little bit more subdued. I feel like they were shocked by what you did. It's an incredible clip, and I can't wait to show it on the program. We're going to walk through that.
See, here's
got it.
Here
you go.
Here's that. Look.
Oh, here's the pick six.
See.
What are you thinking right now at the
40? I'm thinking don't trip and don't get caught. Like, that's it. Do not trip on the blade of grass.
Was there a Jumbotron back then? Like, could you watch yourself running down the field?
I don't think they had a Jumbotron there, if I remember correctly, the way their stadium was set up. But no, you couldn't see it running towards it. And again, I wasn't thinking about it like that. I was just thinking, okay, one, catch the ball. Because I remember that play. We talked about it. They got down in our goal line, like I think it was on the 2-yard line, and they went full house. And they had a certain play. They would either run it full house or they would run the back out to the flat. And so I was on the goal line defense kind of there, and I was in that linebacker position, and my guy in the third of the full house went to the flat. And I'm like, I can't believe they're going to run a pass here when they had already gotten down there. We were up like 21 or 28-0 at that point. And so when he threw the ball, I was just kind of making sure I made the catch. And the backstory leading up to that was our coaches were yelling at us because they were like, you're not playing what you're supposed to be playing. And somebody needs to make a play. And the coach is yelling at me during the practice. I'll be like, Kerner, make a play. And so I made the play. And then I was like, how about that, coach? Is that good enough play for you? And he's like, okay, I'll take that. Like,
is that the best feeling as a player, as a DB? Like, is a pick six the best? Is it better than a big hit? Is it better than blocking a field goal?
I think it depends on the scenario. I think everyone dreams of having that 100-yard interception. So for me, that was like one of the highlights of just being there, because you don't think it's going to happen. And most teams don't throw into their that close to the goal line and throw a pass because that's the one thing you don't want to happen. If you pick it off, there's nobody really that's going to be able to catch that defensive back. So a lot of teams will try to be careful of how they throw that pass. They'll throw it up, they run a fade so that doesn't happen. So at least you get 3 points out of it. but for some reason they thought they were going to sneak that in there, and we just happened to be coached well enough to kind of recognize that play in that formation, and I was able to make the play on that day.
Don't trip. That's always good advice.
That's it. Do not trip. Do not trip.
Catch
the ball. Right.
Sniper,
don't let it go
no
through your hand.
No sniper.
Then, that's it. Don't trip on the blade of grass on your way to the end zone.
That's great. That's a great way to end the show this week. Hopefully everybody really enjoyed this. I will look forward to the Ohio State recap next week. Notre Dame, USC. There's some other big games. Hopefully I can come in here with my head a little bit higher next week, and at least Notre Dame, gives a good effort.
I'm taking Notre Dame. I'm taking you guys. I'm taking Notre Dame.
I like it. You're higher on my Irish than I am. But hopefully everybody enjoyed it. Like and subscribe, please. And the Cover One College Football channel, if you're not subscribed to that, please subscribe to that as well. Any final thoughts, Marlon?
Go Buckeyes, go Irish. And then hopefully our Bills get back on the winning side as well.
We feel like we need a full podcast for them. All right. We'll talk next week, buddy.
Talk to you next week.